Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Real Estate Mogul MD. My name's Bob Bosick. I'm a retired executive, and I've had the privilege of speaking with medical professionals, high net income earners, and investors. We're here today to share the real-world journeys along with the to-dos and, more importantly, the not-to-dos. I have the pleasure to talk with Vishisht Mehta today, based out of Las Vegas. Recently finished up some fellowships, residency, medical school, and has been just getting started. And so welcome, Vishisht. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Bob. Thanks for having me and reaching out to discuss.
You're very welcome. So tell us a little bit about when you decided that you wanted to go to medical school. How old were you?
Sure. I think the firm decision was probably when I was in 8th, 9th, 10th grade, thereabouts. Trying to see, whatever was next. I will admit I have a role model at home. My father's a physician, but that actually took an interesting turn because at that time, my parents were not entirely sure if they should suggest going into medicine. It's a long road and takes time to reach fruition. It's a hard road as well. And Initially, I was keen to go into engineering, but during grade 11 and 12, felt more and more interested in medicine, did all the prep, etc. for med school. And long story short, here I am.
Oh, very good. Where'd you go to medical school?
I went to med school in India, close to my hometown of Bombay or Mumbai.
Very good. And when did you finish medical school?
In 2012.
And how talk to us about the experience of being an international medical school graduate and the transition over to the United States. What did that entail?
The transition was easy for the most part, at least in getting started. But some things that were difficult were not having a social security number when I showed up.
Right.
And when I went to try and lease my first car just before starting, I had been going to hospital by cab or walking. The dealer showed me my credit report and my score was 0. It wasn't low. It was statistical 0. Because I just had my social about 3 days ago.
Congratulations.
So there were some, random things like that nobody typically thinks about. I have family stateside, so I had been here on and off for many years. So there was not any issue being acclimatized to being in the US necessarily. And then, of course, there's changes that come from going from medical student to resident. But my wife and my wife's a physician too. We couples matched for residency.
Gotcha.
And we met in med school. So, we've been on this journey since you're about 18, 19 years old. So
that's terrific.
That works,
very good. And is she from the same country as you, or did she?
Yep.
Okay.
We met in med school, and then we did our residency together in Omaha, Nebraska, at Creighton. Moved to New York City for fellowships. We both did the same fellowship in different hospitals.
Where did you do your fellowship?
I did pulmonary critical care at Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City.
Yep.
And that was very interesting, very, very specific niche set of patients. But within that niche, very, very deep learning. So that was a great experience. And we had our son in residency, but we then had our twins at the end of fellowship when we were in the ICU, and they were born early March, right when COVID kicked off. We were both ICU fellows. So that was interesting. Yes.
Yes, very much so, I imagine. So were there any challenges being trained in medical school in your home country and then coming to the United States? Is there different are there different things that you would have to learn in some ways here or not?
Definitely. I think the biggest challenges were in expectations of roles and responsibilities of what is to be expected as an intern and then resident versus what we were used to back home.
How so?
I would say we felt more responsibility and then gradually more autonomy. And that was a little bit different than the experience back home. Here we were encouraged to, take the lead and see where we go with it. And always nice to have, somebody who's got our back. So There was a lot of security while being, given a fairly long leash.
Right.
I think other things that were different was remarkable access to information. Up to date is something we take for granted, but I had never really used it before coming stateside. And advanced imaging, actually, regular use of CAT scans, MRIs, which again seems so silly to say, but that was something that was big change and difference. It was always, X-rays and X-rays being held up to the window to literally change the window rather than something on a computer screen. Those kinds of things. Electronic charts. We just had poorly scribbled paper notes back there. So that was also a change. A lot of things I think others are just used to, not so much take for granted, but used to.
Is there any extra steps for you as a medical student from a foreign country going into intern residency than a graduate from the United States?
Yes. The main extra step is having ECFMG certification, which is the Education Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates. Essentially to say, after you go through your steps, etc., they say you're a real person from a real med school. And a lot of our documents have to be source verified by the med school to kind of make everything kosher, for lack of better words. But the exams are the same, and I didn't do any residency back home or repeat anything here. It was just, gradual next steps.
Very good. Okay. So why was becoming a doctor important to you? Clearly, it takes years to do. It's a very labor intensive throughout your entire career, but certainly at the beginning stages of it. Why go this path? Why was that important to you?
Honestly, medicine is interesting. That's the best answer I have. Of course, it's nice to be able to help people and to see the results of that effort. Rather than say, I designed a software did this, and then there's some value to society down the road, which sometimes can be abstract, but that's just my opinion.
Right.
I think there was a lot of realism. There was also a lot of variety, not just, being interesting, but also different things constantly. So the kind of puzzle solving aspect of it was very intriguing. And
every day is slightly different.
I liked it. So that's pretty much it.
What's the biggest challenge you faced, and what have you learned from it through the entire process? Biggest challenge?
I think one of the hardest things was when my wife and I were ICU fellows when COVID had just started. So our kids were born early March, the twins. So we were home on paternal leave, maternal leave, and everything was, very quiet. There were maybe 2 or 3 cases in the hospital, and we were in New York City. And then by the time I was ready to go back in 10 days, 2 weeks, the whole thing had exploded.
Right.
So managing night shifts or overnight shifts or 24-hour shifts in the ICU, my wife managing at home, and we had a 4-year-old in addition. And then when she would go to ICU, I would try and do this all while trying to find our jobs. And I was moving in 3 months for my 3rd fellowship in Michigan. So juggling all of that was a fairly impossible task. I had to go on FMLA because there was no other way to do it. And we tried to just kind of stay afloat, basically, at that time. So, when we go back home nowadays and, we're home in, fairly regular hours, or at least for doctors, and we say, okay, we're busy or this or that, we kind of remind ourselves it's nothing like those 3 or 4 months that we went through. So
why 3 fellowships?
So my 3rd fellowship was in interventional pulmonology. I did that in Michigan at Henry Ford Hospital, where I learned advanced bronchoscopic techniques.
And how long are each of these fellowships?
So I did pulmonology for 2 years, critical care for 1 year, and the interventional fellowship for 1 year. My program for pulmonary was unique, that pulmonary was separate from critical care, but at the same time, they were in the same hospital, same administration staff. My email did not change. My pager did not change when we transitioned through. So really the same thing. But the intervention year was an extra year with main focus on lung cancer, the early detection, screening, staging of lung cancer. And that's most of what I've taken from that training and put into practice today, especially in Nevada.
Wow, interesting. If you could go back, you and your wife could go back to your 18-year-old selves, what would you, if you go back in time, what would you two tell each other with the wisdom that you have now, getting ready, if you were at 18, getting ready to go on the journey? What would you do different?
I don't think we would do anything different, but we would tell each other that it's going to be a long road, but it's going to be worth it. So, it's not so much that there's light at the end of the tunnel, which just means your journey is ending or your hardship is ending, but more that there will be hardship, but it'll be worth the hardship. So I think that's what I would say, not to, put your head down or put your chin down or let your head drop, things of that sort.
So do you, knowing that you both are, I talk to people at various stages in their career. Do you find that you're already thinking about, I need to be ahead of the curve on investments and what am I going to do? Or have you given any thought to that and how you're going to go about it?
Absolutely. I started investing somewhat in 2016, 2017. And for a couple years did okay, or better than okay. But when we found out we were going to have twins, maybe 3 or 4 months after that, sold everything, which is not much by grown-up standards, but it was a lot to us. And
right.
Then through COVID, missed the rise after COVID, but consequently have missed most of the fall or recovery also, because our energy has gone in new location, new jobs, first jobs, and now 3 kids. But sticking on that same theme, most of my efforts now are for their education, to make sure we have saved up more so than my personal retirement funds or not, because for me their education is a priority. I don't need much to go on. At least that's what my wife and I feel. But if as parents, if they are secure, then the rest of it does not matter. So
what were the investment tools you were using? Were you doing Bitcoin or stocks, or what were you doing?
No, it was mostly individual stocks.
Yeah.
Shopify, a little bit of Twitter, Microsoft when it was $60 or $70. Not so much Apple, missed Tesla. But that space, there were some good runs with DocuSign, Carvana, so on and so forth. But I found myself spending so much time there.
I know.
That I could not.
You start staring at the screen a lot, don't you, during the day?
A lot. Yahoo Finance all the time. But yeah.
Very good. Is there anybody along the way that you think the listeners probably don't know, but maybe they should know? Is there anybody that you can think of that they might want to hear or listen to?
In terms of?
Anything you've learned along the way that was life transformational for you, or an aha moment? Is there a book? Is there speakers or anybody that, and it's okay if you don't have somebody that doesn't come to mind, but if somebody does, you have someone?
Yeah. I find myself going back to a couple of lectures from Adam Grant, I think, who speaks about motivation and procrastination. And I think listening to something like that every few months, even if it's the same thing, is a great part of metacognition and thinking about how each one thinks and how we interact with the world around us and what our own makeup is. So I think some of those thoughts I've tried to keep, and I tend to have some out there ideas, and I sometimes get told to kind of stay within the box, but I remind myself it's okay once in a while to at least explore and think, and there's no harm in thinking about things and trying things, as long as you're not doing something crazy or reckless. I
Very
use that
good.
mostly in the crypto space or the investing space, or even in trying to expand business or work and so on and so forth.
Very good. Are you going to function as a hospitalist, or will you open up a practice somewhere? How will you go forward?
Sure. So I'm in a private practice with the Comprehensive Cancer Centers of Nevada, and we are what 40 to 50 doctors, mostly oncologists, but I'm one of the lung doctors within that division. So my training has always lived at the intersection of pulmonary medicine, lung disease, and oncology. In fact, I launched the robotic bronchoscopy program at Mountain View Hospital, which is where I did 2 procedures this morning. And this lets us get to very, very small spots in the lung with a lot of accuracy. And this is, the future, and the future is here. So I find that I'm going to be carving my niche in this space at this intersection. And I think that's very, very exciting and interesting. And some of the efforts I take, which is where I was before we got on the call, is going door to door almost to primary care doctors and explaining the benefits of doing lung cancer screening and how we can save lives by finding cancer earlier, and how I can help with this technology in getting a diagnosis. So we don't have patients who have late stage disease, but we have early stage, and we shift the stage early. So that's where most of my energy goes when I'm not directly seeing patients.
Well, that's very interesting, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you joining us today. I know time is tight for you today. You're on to some other things and helping other people, but Vishi, I just wanted to say thank you very much for joining us today, sharing your interesting story, telling us a little bit about yourself, and you have a terrific day.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All righty. Bye-bye.